Am I live? Hi there. I'm Linda Watanabe McFerrin, one of the authors at Allen Squire Publishing, and I am filling in for Rose Solari today on her popular Rose Reads show. And I'm one of several authors that have been participating in this for this month. And the next author coming up after my appearance will be Mark Pritchard, author of Billy Christmas. So in this show, Rose goes over different writers and reviews different writers that she really enjoys, and I get to do that today, so I'm pretty excited about that. My book with Allen Squire Publishing is Navigating the Divide, and it's a collection of my published poetry, long and short fiction, novels, short stories, and creative nonfiction. And I would hold the book up right now, but I've attempted, and in fact I won't be holding any of the books up because I tried to hold them up and they all come up backwards. So I think it's really important that I give you a disclaimer first of all, and that is that I am the farthest thing from a techie that you could imagine. I am very comfortable on the page. This is not comfortable terrain for me. So if there's a blackout or something along the way, it's because of me, because I really am not expert at this. However, I am pretty expert at the things that I love in literature, and those are what I'll be sharing with you today. So my book is about navigating the divide. It's about the space in between cultures and genres, and that's what I'll be focusing on today. It's part of the Legacy series, which also features the work of Richard Peabody, the editor of Gargoyle magazine, and also Rose Cavalieri, who is the Poet Laureate of Maryland. Two wonderful writers with extraordinary collections. So I feel very blessed to be part of that group in the Legacy series, and very blessed to be part of Allen Squire Publishing, because it's a marvelous team and a great community of people. Also on Mondays, James J. Patterson has a show, which is The Reading Room with James J. Patterson, and that happens at 1 o'clock PST and 4 o'clock EST. So, another disclaimer is, if you are watching this, or if anything's going on with this where you're connecting, I have no idea. All I'm going to be able to do is read and share this with you, because I'm really a novice at this. If I get more practice, maybe I'll learn more about it later. But for now, let me just share the work that I like. And one of the reasons I like this work is, first of all, because being multicultural, taking place betwixt and between, it's very much about part of what's going on in the culture today. Definitely what has been going on for me all through my life in terms of the literary world, both when I was younger and now, of being betwixt and between. So what I'm going to be reading today are bits that have to do with identity and of crossing boundaries. And I think you'll enjoy the work. Some of it is very intense, so be prepared for that. So I thought I would start out with work that is on a happier note, though you'll find that humor also has its own intensity. And along those lines, I want to start out with a writer whose work I absolutely love, and that's the work of Leland Schuck. Leland Schuck is the author of 3 books of fiction, his most recent being No Good, Very Bad Asian from C&R Press, which came out in October 2019. And that actually happens to be the same time that my book came out. So Leland and I got to know one another for the first time at that time. He runs the indie press 713 Books, and his work really deals with cultural issues. The way people are perceived in this country when they come from, when they have a background that's maybe a little bit different, and the way we perceive one another. So Leland introduces readers in his book to this fabulous protagonist. Who's a comic in New York, and Leland was also a comedian for some time, so that's kind of interesting, because all fiction is based on our own lives. So and Leland's comic's name, his protagonist's name, is Sirius Lee. I mean, seriously? Okay, the humor begins there. But his comic comedian is a Chinese American who, aspiring to be a stand-up comedian, goes through just this trajectory that leads him to an unfortunate situation wherein he ends his book with a letter to his daughter about what and what not to do. I'm going to give you a little sample of it, and then you'll know why I like Leland's work. So, from No Good, Very Bad Asian. In 4th grade, I noticed that I only found white girls attractive. I used to watch every last rerun of My Two Dads because I wanted to marry a girl like Nicole. Something was wrong with me. My class was almost two-thirds by then, and I didn't think about any of these Chinese girls in the same way I thought about the white ones. I liked this girl named Courtney. She had blue eyes, freckles, and long, wavy auburn hair. And she wore those print maxi dresses that made her look like a 70s love child. I liked her mainly because in addition to finding her cute, she was the one white girl in class who was shorter than me. Because I liked her, I attacked her mercilessly in Foursquare. One day, after eliminating her yet again with a barrage of corner shots, she pushed me in the chest and shouted, "Why do you keep picking on me?" We were talking. I was so excited. "I'm sorry," I said, steeling my jaw, "but I'm trying to make you better." "You're so mean." "No, I'm not," I said. "I like you. I want to be your friend." Courtney lowered her eyes and shook her head. "I'm not going to be friends with you," she said. "You look like a Lego." "A Lego? Little? Yellow? With C-shaped arms?" "Well, your freckles make you look dirty," was the best retort I could manage. Courtney started wailing and ran to the teacher on recess duty. There would be no recess for me for 2 days. Now that I'm older, I know the way Courtney saw me and the way I saw Courtney were a result of a malfunctioning of our brains. I put her on this pedestal and she looked down upon me because of the color of my skin, because of the different ways I dressed, because she was a girl and I a boy. It was all subconscious and it happened before we could do anything about it. Soon, people will look at you in ways that you don't want to be seen. He's talking to his daughter, Marianne. Maybe they'll wonder where you're from. Maybe they'll be eyeing your prep school uniform and thinking about how much money your family has. Maybe they'll be gawking at your height, your weight, the size and shape of your body parts. Their gaze may make you feel worthless or worth less than the next person, unwanted. You might not want to be seen at all. Maybe you'll just want to be free, like the Matt Poles of the world. The mindless way we look upon each other is a disease and it has many names. Some call it racism, or sexism, or classicism. I call it zombieism. There's no cure, no doctors to help, and we all suffer from it from time to time. All you can do is be aware that what a zombie sees isn't real. So the mention of the zombies at the end probably brings to mind some of the works that I've done. Well, I love to write about zombies, so you can figure out another reason why I love Leland's work is that he really epitomizes how I think sometimes we live in the world, which is a little bit like zombies. Good thing to learn how not to be a zombie now in these times. And I think Leland's work is extraordinarily relevant. When I was a little girl, very little, I got called a Jap a lot, and I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea. It was one of many things that I discovered as I grew older that made me different, and one of many reasons why I had to find a way to live in between all of that. So Leland Chuck, everybody. And the book is No Good, Very Bad Asian. All right, so now we go to more serious works. Well, not that his isn't serious, it's comic, but it's very serious. Now we go to deeper, darker kinds of works. And the next work that I want to read from is a work by Timsy Hernandez called Skin Tax. It's poetry, and I love poetry because you can do a lot of things, just like comedy, that maybe you can't do in prose, or it's a little bit harder to do in prose. So I first became familiar, I met Tim on the page first, and that was when he was a young man, and now he's a bit older man. So but his work was riveting to me, and I was stunned by it. He won an award for this book, well-deserved award. And I'm just going to read an example so you'll get an idea of his voice. And also of the kinds of things I like. So, and hopefully the kinds of things you like. I just saw a note. I can actually see a note here. And it says, don't be a zombie. Yes, don't be a zombie. This one's entitled Mama's Boy. Mama's Boy. They say I'm a mama's boy, like it's a bad thing, when all along I thought that's what a man was. They say my skin was made from goat's milk and dandelions, and that my eyes were plucked from cherry blossoms in the month of February. A mama's boy, they say, with hands too soft for picking, legs thin as sprigs of mesquite. They say my voice lacks the asphalt grit of courage, that I should work on it, and that my name is even too short to call me by name. And they're right. When they say I was born with a hole in my heart the size of a tiny fish eye, they're right. When they shout mama's boy and poke at the tenderness that is my back, claiming that my hair was quilted from a beggar's scarf, and that my smile was strewn from tender husks of sugar cane, it's true. Since I fondled and groped at the inside of my mama's womb, just a squirming confirmation of father's lust, I've been scheming of ways to retreat to that warm, familiar sack of membrane and love manifold. This is why I lead with the docile nose of a house cat, speak my intentions in raw doggerel utterances from the stiff core of a loose, taciturn tongue. Why I tweeze the nose hair clean behind locked doors, using the reflection of surgical steel buck knives and limp toilet handles. Lather my jaw with baking powder and lava rock, skin tacks for the morning peel. Because I am soft, zephyr soft, and teeming with secrets. I am the watermark of houses submerged, my whimpering howl a rivulet of what remains from the hidden tidal tears of men. Which is why they do not lie when they say that my feeble knees are the silk and steel edges of grandfather's worn plow discs. Tease that my stomach is a soft cushion stuffed with the down of 1,000 geese. That my nipples are the fragile embroidery of Victorian gowns. My words, they say, these boyish longings, do not pounce from the gut like alloy candy drum fire wine lingo. Do not come like razor-necked nicks splashed in allspice fire. Will not crowbar the rib cage, will not shoehorn the chunk boot, or adorn the rear-view mirror in deer, hoof, rabbit, knuckle-up charms. Instead, they are made from sugar water and pomegranate lust, jelly for the dawn song, warm rhythms for the doubtful eye and the accusing heart. It is because of this they jab their crooked fingers in my face and shout, "Mama's boy," like it's a bad thing, when all along, you see, I thought that's what a man was. Wonderful, isn't it? I also find it profoundly moving. Okay, so Tim Z. Hernandez from Central Valley, you can hear the echo of the Central Valley in that work. You can also hear the angst of somebody betwixt and between. Somebody who isn't addressing things in the way that it's maybe proper to be addressed or acceptable to be addressed, but is looking at things from a slant angle, which is, I think, the only way to see things as they really are. So now, moving on to a different culture, this one being the culture from which I come, being part Japanese. This is a beautiful poem by Garrett Hongo, and it's something whispered in the shakuhachi. And some of you may have heard the lonely tones of the shakuhachi flute. Well, this has that sort of lonely tone to it. It's a beautiful poem. something whispered in the shakuhachi. No one knew the secret of my flutes, and I laugh now, because some said I was enlightened. But the truth is, I'm only a gardener who before the war was a dirt farmer and learned how to grow the bamboo in ditches next to the fields, how to leave things alone and let the silt build up, until it was deep enough to stink, bad as night soil, bad as the long witch gray hair of a ghost. No secret of that. My land was no good, rocky, and so dry I had to sneak water from the whites, hacksaw the locks off the chutes at night, and blame Mexicans, Filipinos, or else some wicked spirit of a migrant murdered in his sleep by sheriffs and wanting revenge. Even though they never believed me, it didn't matter. No witnesses. And my land was never thick with rice. Only the bamboo growing lush as old melodies and whispering like brushstrokes against the fine scroll of wind. I found some string in the shed, or else took a few stalks and stripped off their skins, wove the fibers, the floss, into cords I could bind around the feet, ankles, and throats of only the best bamboos. I used an ice pick for an awl, a fish knife to carve finger holes, and a scythe to shape the mouthpiece. I had my flutes. When the war came, I told myself I lost nothing. My land, which was barren, was not actually mine, but leased. We could not own property. And the shacks didn't matter. What did were the power lines nearby, and that sabotage was suspected. What mattered to me were the flutes I burned in a small fire by the bathhouse. All through relocation in the desert where they put us, at night when the stars talked and the sky came down and drummed against the mesas, I could hear my flutes wail like fists of wind whistling through the barracks. I came out of camp, a blanket slung over my shoulder, found land next to this swamp, planted strawberries and bean plants, planted the dwarf pines and tended them, got rich enough to quit and leave things alone. Let the ditches clog with silt again. So when and the bamboo grow thick as history. So when it's bad now, when I can't remember what's lost and all I have for the world to take means nothing, I go out back of the greenhouse at the far end of my land, where the grasses go wild and the arroyos come up with cat's claw and giant dahlias, where the children of my neighbors consult with the wise heads of sunflowers, huge against the sky, where the rivers of weather and the charred ghosts of old melodies converge to flood my land and sustain the one thicket of memory that calls for me to come and sit among the tall canes and shape full-throated songs out of wind, out of bamboo, out of a voice that only whispers. Powerful, powerful poem. I really love the work of Garrett Hongo. And I hope you're, if you haven't been introduced to his work, I hope you're a fan now too. So as you can see, I'm reading things that are kind of off and not the center of the culture maybe, but becoming more and more so and being more recognized. When I was a girl growing up, we didn't have these books or these writers, or we did have them, but they weren't part of the curriculum. So I felt like all those children who played with Barbie dolls, like almost all of us, girls, people of color, that I wasn't actually part of the whole scene. I like now that we're pulling people in and we're realizing that we're all part of the scene and that our literature can be published as well, and these voices are no longer silenced in various ways. So it's kind of exciting. It's been exciting to be part of that. And I really thank Ellen Squire for being part of that. you'll find it, if you look at their list, which you can find on Alan Squire Publishing's website, you'll see that it's quite a varied list. And it's wonderful to be part of that world. The next book the next reading I want to share is a couple poems by a poet by the name of Javier Zamora, and he's a young poet. I actually was introduced by him. I'm the founder of Left Coast Writers on the West Coast, the Left Coast, and one of the members of our organization, and also a poet whose work I love, Rebecca Faust, who is a tremendous poet and was the poet laureate of Marin County for some time, introduced me to Javier's work. So I would hold up the book cover, but I told you it will go backwards. Well, I'll do it anyway. See, it's backwards. Anyway, Javier's book, Unaccompanied, has some beautiful poems in it. I'm going to share two of them. The first one is Saguaros. Saguaros. It was dusk for kilometers, and bats in the lavender sky, like spiders when a fly is caught, began to appear. And there, not the promised land, but barbed wire and barbed wire, with nothing growing under it. I tried to fly that dusk after a bat said, "La sangre del saguaro nos seduce." Sometimes I wake and my throat is dry, so I drive to botanical gardens to search for red fruits at the top of the saguaros, the ones at dusk I threw rocks at for the sake of hunger. But I never find them here. These bats speak English only. Sometimes in my car, that vicious red syrup clings to my throat, and I have to pull over. I also scraped needles first, then carved those tall torsos for water, then spotlights drove me and 30 others dashing into Palo Verdes. Green striped trucks surrounded us, and our empty bottles rattled. When the trucks left, a cold cell swallowed us. Powerful. Pause before moving on to the next poem, also by Javier from Unaccompanied. And this is about a crossing, of course, about migration to the United States. Unfortunately, the end result was not, for many people, has not been a better life, which is a sad thing because it used to be a better life. Second attempt crossing. For Chino. In the middle of that desert that didn't look like sand and sand only, in the middle of those acacias, whiptails, and coyotes, someone yelled, "La migra!" and everyone ran. In that dried creek where 40 of us slept, we turned to each other, and you flew from my side in the dirt. Black-throated sparrows in dawn hitting the tops of mesquites against the herd of legs. You sprinted back toward me. I jumped on your shoulders, and we ran from the white trucks, then their guns. I said, "Freeze, Chino, para, por favor," so I wouldn't touch their legs that kicked you. You pushed me under your chest, and I never thanked you. Beautiful. The only name I know to call you by. Farewell your tattooed chest, the M, the S, the 13. The phone number you gave me when you went east to Virginia, and I went west to San Francisco. You called twice a month. Then your cousin said the gang you ran from in San Salvador found you in Alexandria. Farewell your brown arms that shielded me then, that shield me now from La Migra. Of course, La Migra is the migration, the immigration, the border patrol. So that's a very, very, another very, very powerful poem. I just want to make sure that we're reading these things and hearing what's going on outside our little bubbles, because we do tend to live in little bubbles. We also put people in bubbles. That's not a good thing. I'm going to do a little PR for Alan Squire Publishing. I hope you'll follow Alan Squire on their Facebook page, online, and also on their website. And I want to mention, again, Grace Cavalieri and Richard Peabody, the two other contributors to the Legacy series, which I'm lucky to be part of now. And to some of the other authors in the group, to Reuben Jackson, to Mark Pritchard, to Elizabeth Hazen, and of course to Rose Solari and James Patterson, the writers and publishers of the group, and then to Joanna Biggar, who is also one of the authors, super good friend of mine, and my editor for Navigating the Divide. So shout out to all of you and to the team at Alan Squire Publishing, who put together beautiful, beautiful books, and in a style that is happily old-fashioned in many ways. Okay, that is the business part. For the second part of this show, I decided I would share something that really had an effect on me as I was growing up. I was much older by the time I read Jean Wakatsuki Houston's books. The first one being A Farewell to Manzanar. And it's horrible to say, but I did grow up not really knowing about the Japanese internment experience. Though I was called names as a little girl because I look Asian, I'm sure a lot of people are called names for various reasons, for their body parts, as Leland mentions, for their skin color, for just so many different things. I had not heard about this because it wasn't in the literature that we were reading in school. So sad that it wasn't, because I think we could have all learned something from it. And I like to think that our literature is richer now, the literature for children. I'm not sure that it is, but at least the books are out there for kids to read. So the book that I'm reading from now, Jean Wakatsuki Houston's book, The Legend of Fire Horse Woman, is also about the experience in the internment camps during the Second World War. Her first book, A Farewell to Manzanar, was heartbreakingly beautiful, and it was about her experience. I like books that cross the divide. So these are novels that are based on personal experience, so kind of like memoirs, which I think everything is really based on our personal experience. It's great to disguise it in a novel, and some of the memoirs now, which are from one person's point of view, are really important because they're showing us an angle to look at. And the one thing that I think, or many things that I think is wonderful about social media is we get this perspective and we can triangulate toward a truth, multiple perspectives that lead to a truth rather than, tunnel vision. So the book that I'm going to read from now is The Legend of Fire Horse Woman by Jean Wakatsuki Houston. And I'm going to read a chapter called Thanksgiving 1942. This book is a book about a woman who was born in Hiroshima, Japan in 1902. It takes place in California. She comes and she has a daughter here, and the family ends up in the camp in Manzanar. Of course, Manzanar being where Jeannie was actually interned. So there, I've visited some of the ghostly remnants of these camps, and it's really terrifying. There is barbed wire around them. There are guard houses with guns. And it makes me think about the people that have come across the border that are trapped in any border, any refugees that are trapped in places. But this was different. These were American citizens who were arrested and taken away from their homes and their belongings and incarcerated with no recourse and no way to, no defense, no way to defend themselves. It was en masse. So anyway, Thanksgiving 1942, Manzanar. Ironically, Thanksgiving, Manzanar. A few days before Thanksgiving, Tad and Mac returned from Idaho, bringing tales of back-breaking labor, sacking potatoes, and cutting sugar beets, living in quarters hardly different from the camp barracks. The farmers were unfriendly at first, Mac said, but warmed up when they saw how fast and competent the internees were and that they spoke English. Amazing, exclaimed Mac, who had lost some weight but looked tan and fit otherwise. They're real country bumpkins up north. They were surprised we spoke English and didn't have buck teeth and wear glasses. But after we got to know each other, they were pretty nice, even a bit grateful. Their 6-week stint of freedom was no different from life in camp, except that they were not surrounded by barbed wire. Hannah had no prior notice of their return and was startled when they tumbled through the barracks door, dragging their duffel bags across the newly polished linoleum. Tad took no notice of the changed beds and unpacked furiously, as if by reinstating his presence in the compartment, he could erase the past 6 weeks. He is tense, more tense than before the furlough. In contrast, Mark unpacked his bag deliberately, smoothing wrinkles from each piece of clothing. Watching him, Hannah's heart wrung. She realized he was on the threshold of manhood, wanting to be an adult, but still a teenager, worried about the look of his clothes. During the short time they were alone, Tad made love to her with a frenzy that was frightening. She knew intuitively it was not the time away nor the possibility he missed her that spurred his turbulent lovemaking. He seemed angry, frustrated. Even after his explosive release, he was not relaxed. Though it is Thanksgiving Day, Hannah knows for them in camp it will be no different from any other day. No turkey with trimmings, or a big table around which the family could sit and gorge on mashed potatoes and gravy, succotash, yams, and limitless varieties of pickles, olives, and relishes. She has heard from the mess hall crew they will be eating lamb stew. She remembers the Thanksgivings of her childhood, the cheerful, sometimes raucous festivity at the Heavenly Cloud Inn with the geisha and her mother and Yoshio. They had turkey stuffed with rice and many accompanying dishes of raw fish, pickled vegetables, and yams, all washed down with copious amounts of warm sake. Dressed in kimono, her mother and the older geisha danced and played the shamisen, while Yoshio and she watched, laughing uproariously when the ladies tripped and sprawled on the tatami as the evening wore on and sake took its toll. Hannah sits in the barracks, sewing a pinafore for Mary, one of the orphans at the children's village. Mac and Tad enter, ignoring her presence. God damn, we're gone a few weeks and the whole place is ready to explode. Tad sounds angry. You'd think there'd be some rational thinkers left here. I think the Kaibe have a point. I hear they're not all crazies. Buffalo has a cool head. Mac seems to be trying to placate him. And then there's that Shimizu guy, the Boy Scout tailor. He goes to the meetings too. So they're not all Kaibes rebelling without any thought. Hannah stops sewing. She remembers Shimi saying he knows his reputation is that of a goody-goody, even a queer. It offends her that Mac, her son, is one of those who thinks in such an unfair and crude way. She listens carefully, an uneasiness dampening her Thanksgiving reverie. She realizes Tad and Mac already are becoming involved in the controversy. She wonders if they plan on attending the meetings. Her question is answered when Tad says, I'm going to find out what's really happening. Anything you hear. I'm going too, says Mac. Fine. The more sane people, the better. Some are saying at the canteen that some guys plan on marching to Army headquarters, headbands, flags, and all. What the hell's the point? We should have protested earlier when they brought us here. Hannah hears resentment in Tad's voice. She doesn't remember him being so bitter before he went on furlough. Maybe she simply hadn't noticed. Since meeting Shimmy, she has become more aware of the world around her, as if she'd been hibernating in a cocoon, safely insulated from a dangerous and demanding life. Still not fully engaged in that life, she's not sure if she wants to join it wholeheartedly. Since the men return, she finds herself at times retiring into her former shell. But she has not seen Shimmy since the day he told her about his life. And now, even the thought of him quickens her heart and overcomes any desire to retreat again into that refuge. She thinks she too would like to go to the meeting, but she doesn't ask, knowing it is for men only. She will finish sewing Mary's pinafore and deliver it to the children's village before dinner time. Lamb stew for Thanksgiving. After an uneventful dinner, during which no mention is made of Thanksgiving, Hana walks with her mother to the tea room. She notices how Sayo stands so erect, her back seamless and flat as a military officer's. Even at her age, Hana guesses she's in her middle 60s or even 70. She is stunning. Having lived a great part of her life in the shadow of this elegant woman, Hana still feels small and insignificant next to her. But gradually, the resentment has lightened, even transforming into admiration. Now, instead of resisting her mother's power by denying it in herself, she seeks to find it. "Where is Terry?" Hana asks. "I hardly see her anymore." "I was just going to ask you. She must be with Mitzi or watching the boys play baseball." "And Carmen?" Sayo asks. "I've given up on her. She's always with her friend Patty. They're interested in singing and dancing. The other day I told her she should move to the Block 30 with Patty." "The family is slowly breaking up," Sayo says gravely. Hana says, "I was just thinking about Thanksgiving in the old days at Watsonville, how fun it was with Yoshio and the girls." Sayo smiles wanly, remembering. "And what about your Thanksgivings in Venice? The fancy china and silver, like the Hakujin pictures in magazines. I could never stand that cranberry sauce you served in place of tsukimono." Her voice was strong. And Sayo continued, "Our tree has been cut at the root, but we can remain standing. Even if blown by the greatest wind, we must hold on to the earth, keep our feet on the ground." Hana is not certain what her mother means, but takes the chance and asks, "Do you think the kaibe's roots are cut too, and they are floating around in this desert?" Sayo laughs, a soft, girlish tinkling. "Absolutely. You know, there's a meeting tonight. I'm of a mind to go, just to shock those yogores, such troublemakers." "Did you know Tad and Mac are going?" "Good. Bring some sense to the meeting. Our friend Shimmy has been attending, and they've given him a rough time." Hana bravely suggests, "Why don't we go? We don't have to participate, just observe from the sidelines." Sayo stares, studying her daughter as if seeing her for the first time. Then she laughs. "A great idea. We can at least go and watch from the back. I'm glad you were suggesting it." Her eyes are warm. Hana feels bathed in respect. The two quicken their steps back to the barracks. Hana realizes this is the first time she and her mother have contrived together to do something questionable. The thought pleases her, and she is all the more determined to continue speaking what she thinks. It is an especially dark night, with a splinter of a moon barely visible in the clouded sky. Hana wears woolen trousers and her navy peacoat, while Sayo still dresses in kimono, which she has layered with several undergarments for warmth. She has draped a woolen shawl over her shoulders and head. On her feet, she wears thick socks and high wooden geita, clattering clogs that make the only sound in the silent camp as they cross the two fire breaks to Block 34, the one farthest away from the administration buildings. Sayo breaks the quiet. "This night is strange. I feel something bad is going to happen. See, no moon." She points to the sky. The thin crescent has disappeared. Hana feels goose pimples rise on her neck and arms. She's used to her mother's premonitions, and although she herself does not believe in ghosts and spirits, as do Sayo and Terry, she feels the eeriness of the night, can almost see apparitions forming in the misty firebreak. They soon reach the mess hall, from which they hear loud male voices. They climb some stairs to a small porch where the double doors of the large building are closed, but not locked. Sayo gently pulls one of the doors open enough so they can slide through discreetly. A few men turn their sharp, shocked looks as they enter the smoke-filled room, but soon return their attention to the speaker in front. There are close to 40 men seated around the mess hall tables. Hana sees Tad and Mac with some men who are not wearing headbands. She surmises those wearing the white headbands, of whom there are about 20, are the Kaibe. She looks for Shimi and finds him at the front near the podium. The speaker is slight and pimply-faced. Sayo whispers, he's one of the Yogores, ganging up on Shimi that day. Speaking rapidly in a Japanese dialect unfamiliar to Hana, the Kaibe waves his arms and begins shouting. Even from afar she can see his wild, glaring eyes, spittle flying from his mouth. What is he saying? She whispers to Sayo. He's saying nothing, just hot air about traitors in camp. Traitors? Against who? America or Japan? He doesn't know. They just want to blame so they can fight, beat someone up. To Hana's consternation, Shimi stands up to speak. In English, he says, "We shouldn't be attacking each other. No one put us in here but the government. I say we sign a petition and protest peacefully to the administration. Remember, the army has guns." "Inu!" someone shouts. "Coward! Go back to the sewing with the women, queer!" Suddenly, Tad stands up, shocking Hana. She sees he is trying to stay calm, his jaws tight and speech measured. "Hey, I think you guys are being unrealistic. I've just come back from the real world outside, and let me tell you, they don't like us much out there. What makes you think the soldiers feel any different? Why give them an excuse to shoot us?" More booing and shouts. Just as another speaker takes the podium, the door bursts open and a huge man enters. He's dressed in kimono and wears high geta, elevating him well above 6 feet. It is Buffalo Iseri. He stands beside Hana, arms folded across his vast chest, and waits for the man to speak. After a flurry of excited whispers, the room quiets and the speaker begins a screaming rampage. Hana notices Buffalo's jaws clenching and unclenching as the voice rises in pitch and volume. "What is he saying?" she whispers to Sayo. "This one is talking about marching on army headquarters. He's crazy." Buffalo yells in a booming voice speaking English. "Hey, talk American to everyone so we can understand. We're not supposed to be speaking Japanese at meetings." Hana can tell he's baiting the speaker. She knows he could care less about the language that is spoken. Buffalo's words cause an explosion of curses and shouting as those internees not inflicted with Kaibe and now strengthened by his presence begin voicing their opinions. The yelling mounts, benches are turned over, and most of the men are standing, fists and feet ready to fly. Suddenly, the room becomes pitch black. Someone has turned off the lights. Buffalo grabs Hana and Sayo and propels them from the mess hall, almost carrying them bodily. After depositing them in a safe distance, he leaves without a word. Sayo calls out, "Iseri-san, please come and have tea with us at our ochaya. Block 16. He calls back, "Thank you, Sayo-san. I will. I know about you and your tea room." As they cross the fire break, Tad and is oddly unafraid of what Tad will do or say. "What in the hell were you and Sayo doing at that fucking meeting?" As she expected, he is furious. He is stunned when she answers back, "Sayo and I want to know what's going on. You and Matt could have gotten hurt too." "Fuck," he shouts. She braces herself. "As if there aren't enough crazy fuckers in this fucking camp. Son of a bitch. My wife and her mother are nuts too." Mac intercedes. Okay, Dad. Mom and Obachan are fine. No problem. Nobody cared they were there." "I fucking care. And what about the giant asshole Buffalo? He was there, right next to them. What the hell was he thinking? Probably wanted to hit on them." Unable to contain herself,
Hannah blurts, "That's not true. Buffalo helped us. He ushered us out of there, practically carried us. Why does Tad react so violently about anything to do with her? Her passion shocks everyone. They stop in their tracks, dark shadows in the mist-shrouded fire break. Even Sayo is shaken by the change in her daughter. Max says gently, 'Mom, are you all right?' The realization sweeps over Hannah. Simply because she has spoken out, the family thinks she's gone mad. She begins to laugh, unable to stop giggling. Sayo puts an arm around Hannah and leads her away. She peers through the darkness at her daughter's face, studying the relaxed mouth and mirthful eyes. She sees the spasmodic fluttering of a butterfly, a newly born butterfly, emerging from its cocoon. She too begins to laugh with Hannah, and they quicken their steps toward the bed. Mac and Tad mutter as they follow the women. In worried tones, they speculate as to whether Hannah has begun an early menopause, or perhaps the shock of the internment has caught up. It could even be the water, says Mac. They could put anything in it to make us sick or control us. Maybe that's what's driving everybody crazy around here. The water. Look at the way they shut out the lights. Who would do that? Tad changes the subject. Well, now we're really going to have trouble. Mark my words. Who do you think shut the lights? I'm sure it wasn't Buffalo. Had to be someone in front of someone sneaking in through the kitchen. The next morning, before breakfast, a pounding on the barracks door awakens the Murakami household. Hannah is first out of bed. It is Buffalo, worry on his unshaven face. His breath steams in smoky trails, standing in the doorway, his shoulders bulky under a thick coat. He does resemble a buffalo. Come in, come in. The others are up and surrounding him, waiting for his message. Lincoln Shimizu's been beaten up bad. He's in the hospital. Hannah chokes. Buffalo goes on to explain that Shimmy had been the one to turn off the lights and break up the meeting. It could have gotten pretty nasty, you know. They wanted to fight then and there. Shimmy wanted to avert violence. The Kaibe had been drinking, the rot gut they've been brewing in the barracks. Can we go and see him? Asked Hannah, stomach sinking. No, he's guarded by soldiers. No one knows who did the actual beating, and the Yogores will deny everything. Hannah notices he calls them the same term Sayo has used. Is he badly hurt? It's serious, a concussion, but the doctor says he'll survive. When he gains consciousness, he can tell who attacked him. Tad and Mac dress quickly, planning aloud their next moves. They must meet with other internees and form a coalition. They know the beating could set off retaliations unless they organize. Scheming and plotting, the two men ignore Hannah. She is invisible again. So, very intense scene. And one of the things I think that this illustrates is even there are groups within groups within groups. And sometimes it's hard to decide what is the best reaction for something. Sometimes it's hard to decide what side you want to take. Sometimes it's hard to decide what right is right and what is wrong. And sometimes it's hard to figure out who you are and where you stand in all of that. I do think that reading literature like this, and considering the things that are going on deeply and profoundly, not just on a fatuous sort of superficial level, I do think that thinking about these things does help us not only understand the context a little bit better, but it helps us understand ourselves a little bit more. And in fact, I believe it makes us better people. Okay, that's pretty heavy. And as if that weren't enough, we're going to get a tiny bit heavier. I have one last reading that I want to do. And this is a really important reading for me, because one of the things that is so significant to me today, and I'm really happy to have a chance to say something about it, is the caregivers, the people that are out there on the front lines taking care of people and risking their lives for the people around us, for others. There are caregivers always, people who put what's important first and who take risks and fulfill responsibilities. They're part of the collective. They're a very important part of the collective. It would be wonderful if we could make it easier for them, less difficult. But they're the front lines, they're the soldiers up against some sometimes, and they're fighting in the trenches. So this is a poem that I wrote. It's in my collection, Navigating the Divide, which, as you can see from the selections that I've made, is about the space between things, and it can be even within cultures. It's so appropriate to be talking about that today. It's important to have that dialogue. This is a poem that I wrote after the problems, the nuclear. Oh, I got a little blurb in there. I mean, my computer went my recorder went off for a moment, so I'm back. So this happened during the explosions in Fukushima, and people were afraid to go in. It was very, very radioactive and very, very dangerous. But 50 people went in to help clean up the mess in Fukushima, knowing what they were being exposed to, knowing that it would have an effect. And in many ways, they were caregivers today. People that we should be very, very thankful for. And so I'm reading this for those caregivers because in some ways this is very much like what they are going through. So it's called Containment for the Fukushima 50. Man in white, level A, ghost-like, moving, breathing slowly. In my horrified dream, I hear your ragged inhalation, exhalation through the self-contained breathing apparatus they say will keep you safe from radiation, particles, and gas. These could choke you, stop your already laborious progress through a plant men made to fuel a lust for power. You are anonymous, face encapsulated by the hood, voice rattled by the supplied air respirator, pushed into the voice-operated channel, your umbilicus to clean up operations. You are my zombie hero, dead man walking, while the big brains meet and find new ways to slice and dice the acceptable margin for terror. If I could shower you in flowers, make whole the body that you sacrifice through some bright communal magic, I would do it. But you are that magic. You are the bright white light of courage that dares to contend with the murderous, pissing poison, the greed, the desire, and patiently clean it up. So, actually, I gave Erin Orizon, my character in Dead Love, my zombie girl, credit for that poem. Although since I invented Erin, I guess I wrote the poem. That poem is about the Fukushima 50, and I just want to say that bravery and that courage is something we're experiencing today as people fight COVID all over the world, the caregivers that are on the front lines. So I hope you enjoyed the reading. I hope you found it in some ways uplifting, at least enlightening. And I'm very, very happy to be able to share this guest spot on Rose Reads. Thank you, Rose. Again, I want to mention that Rose Reads is on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock PST, 4 o'clock EST every week. Next week, it'll be Mark Pritchard, who wrote Billy Christmas, who'll be presenting. Also on Mondays at the same time, 1 p.m. PST or PST. Anyway, and 4 p.m. EST is the Reading Hour with James J. Patterson. Also wonderful. You can find these shows on the ASP site, on their Facebook page, Facebook Live, and you don't have to be tuned in right now. You can watch them whenever you want. You can share them, and if you haven't seen some of them already, go back and take a listen because they're really enjoyable, and they will introduce you to a lot of really great literature because that's what Alan Squire is about, great literature. So
This is Linda Watanabe McFerrin signing out. Thanking you for being here. It's been a pleasure navigating the divide with you. So whether you're on the East Coast, the middle, the West Coast, or the rest of the country, I think it's something that we all need to do together. Thanks.